But breaking tonight, the judge in Donald Trump's New York criminal trial just expanded the gag order to include attacks against the judge and the district attorney's family members. Happened in the last half an hour or so, saying, quote, Trump's attacks serve no legitimate purpose but to instill fear. Now, we'll get to why that is important in a moment. But this is connected to Donald Trump ratcheting up his rhetoric this weekend, and it sparked an enormous and divided media reaction over the past few days. And this is where I want to know what all of you think. Here's my analysis, all right? The left-leaning media totally outraged by so many of the former president's recent words and actions, while the right-leaning media downplaying it all. It's just nothing to see. Those of us not in the partisan media business, I think, need to be trying to call balls and strikes, because it's going to continue, right? So we want to tackle what is Trump saying that's actually potentially dangerous, and what is just fodder for the left-leaning media to be outraged again. What's important and what's not? As always, we're going to do our best to try to play it straight for you. You'll tell me where you don't think we are. We're not about celebrating or even excusing Donald Trump, and we're not interested in reflexively blasting him either. Here's the reality that no other cable news network can say. Some of the media reaction to Trump this weekend was vastly overblown. Some of the criticism of the former president was fair and deserved. Let's start with where the left-leaning media, in my view, blew it, with hyperbolic coverage of the video Trump shared on his Truth Social platform, which shows President Biden hogtied on the back of a pickup truck. Now, in a perfect world, we'd probably rather not have our presidential candidates posting stuff like that, right? But over on MSNBC and CNN, this was treated like a five-alarm fire as the pearl-clutching hosts and commentators raced to the nearest soapbox to warn of impending peril.
Video posted by Trump showing the president hogtied in the back of a pickup truck. This kind of violent imagery, this kind of dangerous political rhetoric has become so commonplace, it makes you wonder what the authorities do with this kind of stuff.
He shared an image of the President of the United States bound and gagged, the President of the United States being kidnapped and possibly assassinated.
To think that he posted Joe Biden hogtied in the back of a truck as an image that he wants to send out there, that's more than a warning. That is a complete tell of what the violence that he is provoking could possibly and will probably happen.
Violence will probably happen. It's a constant refrain from the left, the idea that so much of what Trump says is intended to and bound to incite January 6th style violence. Here's the problem with the January 6th comparison that the left-leaning media loves to make about everything. And that is that those Trump supporters on January 6th were led to believe that Donald Trump had actually won the election, and it was stolen from him. It's not true, but if it were, and these forces in the government had actually stolen the election, you can understand the fury of the American public to storm the Capitol. That's very different from some social media meme of a hogtied Joe Biden, who, by the way, has round-the-clock Secret Service protection. Violent political imagery is not new. Our founding fathers used it all the time. Joe Biden can handle this. The voters can decide whether they're offended or outraged. They don't need the left-leaning media creating apocalyptic scenarios. Right, that's part one, where some of you are going to disagree with me. Again, take the calls. Now, that's very different from Trump going after the daughter of the judge presiding over the trial involving the hush money payments to Stormy Daniels. He's been blasting Judge Juan Merchan and his daughter, who has nothing to do with the case and definitely does not have Secret Service protection. Quote, Judge Juan Merchan is totally compromised, he said, and should be removed from this Trump non-case immediately. His daughter, whom he names, is a rabid Trump hater who has admitted to having conversations with her father about me, and yet he gagged me. She works for crooked Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Adam Schiff, other radical leftists. She works at a firm that had represented Democrats. Trump even posted a false claim that the judge's daughter posted pictures of dreaming of Trump in jail. Of course, the judge's daughter had a social media account, which she stopped using, stopped linking to any of her profiles. She created a new private account. Someone clearly has taken over her account. Seems in an effort to help Donald Trump provide some fodder, wrote some crazy stuff, with, by the way, a profile picture on the account of a young Kamala Harris. In subsequent posts, Trump even shared pictures of the judge's daughter. That surely helped lead Judge Merchan to expand his gag order, which is really not that surprising in this context. But that's dangerous stuff from Trump, right? Unlike with Joe Biden, Judge Merchan's daughter is an ordinary citizen whose information is probably readily available and at the least will lead to harassment and almost certainly death threats. That's a big deal. You want to criticize the judge? Go for it. Look, I'd argued at the outset that Judge Merchan should have recused himself just because he made small donations to anti-Republican causes. I thought it was a close call, but I thought it was the right thing to do. Okay. Thus far, his rulings have been pretty measured and fair, even though I've repeatedly said I think the DA should not have brought this case at all. But the attack on the judge's daughter is a different level. It's an effort at intimidation. And that's the kind of attack that should concern all of us, not some political mudslinging that maybe goes too far. By the way, he did this with the court clerk in the New York civil fraud case against him as well. Again, criticize the judge, not the clerk, not the daughter. And then there was the former president's visit to the wake of a slain NYPD officer, which led to another debate and was a bit more of a mixed bag. On Thursday, the former president paid his respects to Jonathan Diller, the NYPD officer who was shot and killed in the line of duty during a traffic stop. 2 men have been indicted in connection with the killing. Officer Diller is the 10th officer this year to be shot and killed in the line of duty. And that deserves attention. And so I give the former president credit for bringing awareness to it. The left-leaning media used the tragedy not to focus on the serious issue at hand, but just to bash Trump.
He used this tragedy as part of his political push to portray himself as the one who is pro-police. This is, of course, despite the fact that he regularly valorizes the mob that stormed the U.S. Capitol.
His big photo op was to go to the funeral of a New York police officer. I think people need to be reminded that that Donald Trump, continues to promise that he's going to pardon the January 6th rioters that attack and beat cops, tased cops.
He did not go to the wake of Officer Sicknick. No. He did not offer condolences to his family. So that showboating at that wake in New York was unfortunate.
Look, the hypocrisy of Trump saying he supports law enforcement except when they don't serve his purposes, like the Capitol Police on January 6th, is real. But I think it's still important that he went to the wake, because it's likely Officer Diller's killing would not have been covered at all, particularly in the left-leaning media, had he not gone. In fact, the officer's killing was not mentioned once on either CNN or MSNBC on its own. It was only covered in the context of Trump's visit. But as significant as that gesture could have been, Trump undermined it by making it purely political.
I support the police, I would say, at the highest level of any president by far, maybe double or triple. And they knew that. That's why when I walked into that funeral parlor, it was like love.
Officer Diller's death should not be used as a political prop. I say this as someone who devotes much of my professional career to appreciating what police officers do for all of us every day. The point is that we have to judge everything Trump and Biden say and do individually, not sweeping with a broad brush. There's going to be so much noise between now and November, and on MSNBC and CNN and the left-leaning media, Trump can seemingly say nothing right. And on Fox and the right-leaning media, Trump seemingly can say nothing wrong. We, in what I call the marginalized moderate majority, know the truth lies somewhere in between. The left-leaning outlets can cry wolf. The right-leaning outlets can sweep everything under the rug. On this show, you can count on us to try to call out what really matters. And now you can call in and tell me why I'm wrong.